Soap and water ran down my arms as I scrubbed the kitchen counter for the third time that night. My mother's voice cut through the air like glass. "You missed a spot, Mara." Before I could answer, her hand cracked against my cheek. The sound echoed. I froze. Bree and Allison sat on the couch, laughing, their wine glasses catching the yellow kitchen light. "You think you can talk back to me?" my mother hissed. I stood there, trembling, the taste of metal in my mouth. My father didn't look up from his paper. Something inside me broke that night, not loudly, but quietly, like glass under snow. I looked at my sister's soft hands and perfect smiles, then at my own cracked fingers. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment with the city and state you are watching from and let me know where this story met you. My name is Mara Whitlock. I learned early that love, in our house, came with bruises and chores. When I was 15, I woke up before dawn to cook breakfast while my sisters slept in. "You're stronger," my mother said. "You don't need as much rest." By the time I finished cleaning, Allison would wander in, yawning, asking for coffee. Bree would complain if her eggs weren't warm enough. Our house smelled like bleach and resentment. Sometimes, I'd pause at the window, watching the morning sun stretch across the fields. I'd imagine another life, a place where my worth wasn't measured by how well I scrubbed a pan. But hope was a luxury I couldn't afford. I was the helper, the fixer, the one who understood responsibility. Even when I left for college years later, my parents didn't say, "We'll miss you." They said, "Don't forget to send money if you get a job." It was funny, in a cruel way. I thought I was escaping. I didn't know they'd find a way to pull me back. 10 years passed before I set foot in that house again. I was 32, tired from losing my job in the city. When my mother called, crying about the family diner failing, guilt pulled me back faster than reason. "We just need your help for a while," she said. "You're so good at these things." When I arrived, the paint peeled off the diner's windows, and the neon sign flickered like it was gasping for air. My father looked older but just as stern. My sisters hadn't changed at all. Allison wore a diamond bracelet, Bree's nails looked fresh from a salon. "Glad you could finally help," my mother said. "We've been drowning." That night, while I cleaned the diner kitchen, my sisters clinked glasses in the corner, planning a weekend trip. I told myself it was only temporary, that I'd help them get back on their feet. But deep down, I knew the truth. I'd stepped right back into the cage I'd escaped. Dinner was always a performance in our house. That night, it turned into a show I'd never forget. My mother had made stew. I was the one who chopped, stirred, and cleaned, of course. Bree and Allison sat across from me, looking bored. "So, Mara," Allison said, smirking, "how's unemployment treating you?" Before I could reply, Bree added, "Guess it's good practice. You've always been good at serving." Laughter. I dropped my spoon, hands shaking. "Do you hear yourselves? I came back to help." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Don't talk back to your sisters. You've always had a temper." The silence that followed was heavy, hot, suffocating. Something snapped in me again, but this time, it wasn't weakness. It was resolve. I finished my meal, stood up, and calmly said, "Enjoy dinner. It's the last one I cook for you." Their laughter died. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch when I walked away. The next morning, no one spoke to me. The house felt colder than usual, like it was holding its breath. I made coffee and packed my things quietly. My plan was simple: leave, go back to the city, and never look back. Then my mother's voice stopped me. "You can't just walk away when the diner's dying, Mara. We need you." I turned. "You need someone to clean your mess." She blinked, pretending not to understand. "You're good with numbers. You could help us manage things." Her words hooked something deep inside me. A lifetime of wanting her approval made me hesitate. Finally, I said, "Fine. I'll help. But I'm running things my way." She laughed like I'd told a joke. Of course, sweetheart. Just like old times. But as I looked at her, I felt something shift. This wasn't like old times. This time, I wasn't coming back to serve. I was coming back to win. The diner smelled like old grease and bad memories. I stood behind the counter, notebook in hand, watching customers drift in and out. The place had once been alive, now it was a ghost. Allison and Bree were sitting at a booth, pretending to help. They were too busy scrolling through their phones. We should repaint the place, I said, scanning the walls. Update the menu, add local dishes, maybe jollof Fridays or plantain specials. Bree rolled her eyes. That's too much work. I smiled. Exactly. I stayed up that night fixing the books, finding where the money disappeared. By dawn, I knew the truth. My sisters had been skimming from the cash drawer for months. When I confronted my mother, she looked away. Their family, Mara. Let's not start a war. I nodded slowly. But a quiet war had already begun, and this time, I planned to win it without lifting a broom or scrubbing a floor. I began changing things quietly. I hired 2 part-timers to clean and cook, paid them from my savings. I made flyers, built a new menu, and talked to local farmers for fresh supplies. Allison scoffed. You're wasting money we don't have. It's my money, I replied. By the 3rd week, the diner started filling up again. The air smelled like grilled peppers and hope. Customers complimented the new look. Feels like the old place, one said. My parents smiled for the first time in months. But my sisters? They started showing up late, complaining that I was trying too hard. They didn't know I was keeping receipts, every expense, every shift, every missing coin. I didn't need to yell. I just needed proof. At night, when the diner went quiet, I'd stand by the counter, staring at my reflection in the glass. This time, I whispered, I'm building something that's mine. One afternoon, a man named Mr. Tate came in. He owned 3 diners in the next town and had heard about our turnaround. You're the one managing this place, he asked. Yes, I said, wiping my hands. He smiled. You've done good work. Ever think of running your own branch? Before I could answer, Allison appeared, sliding into the conversation. Actually, I'm the manager. My sister just helps out. Mr. Tate looked confused. I felt the old sting rise in my chest, but I stayed calm. Oh, he said. Then I'll email you both. Later, I found the message in our shared inbox. Allison had deleted it. That night, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. My whole life, they'd stolen credit for what I built. But not this time. I took screenshots of everything, proof of her lies. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them how much I'd learned cleaning up their messes. By the next month, business was booming. I barely had time to rest, but I didn't mind. For the first time, my effort showed. Reporters came to do a story about the little family diner making a comeback. My mother insisted on being interviewed. Bree and Allison stood beside her, smiling for the cameras. I stayed in the kitchen, watching through the doorway. Mara did most of the work, one reporter said. My mother laughed nervously. We're all a team here. The word team stung like salt. After the interview, I confronted her. Why couldn't you just tell the truth? She looked at me, tired. Because they're not as strong as you, Mara. You can handle being unseen. For years, that sentence would have broken me. But now, it just hardened something inside. I realized they'd never give me what I deserved. So I decided I'd take it myself. I opened a secret account at a new bank. Every profit I made from catering orders, private events, and deliveries, I sent it there. The diner's name was still theirs. But the success? That was mine. Each night, I'd balance the books, smiling to myself as the numbers grew. Allison and Bree didn't notice, they were too busy bragging online about their hard work. One evening, I overheard them talking about selling the diner to Mr. Tate behind my back. "They'll make a nice profit," Bree said. "And Mara can find another job scrubbing tables." My hands went cold. I walked away before they saw me, my pulse hammering in my ears. They thought I was still the quiet helper. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had built the bones of this business. I knew every weakness, every debt, every lie. And if they wanted war, I'd give them a reckoning they'd never forget. The night Allison and Bree whispered about selling to Mr. Tate, I felt a flare of anger, but I kept my face soft. I walked through the dining room, picked up a stack of unpaid bills, and pretended to dust. Later, I found email threads where Allison had promised Mr. Tate she would handle the sale. She had signed a paper in a rush, thinking I would never read it. I did. I printed everything out and put it in a folder labeled Records. I was careful, everything I did was above board. I didn't take or hide anything. I only collected proof of what they said and what they did. If they tried to sell without me, their plan would fall apart when the bank checked the books. I also started talking to Tom, the accountant, more openly. He came in on Mondays and helped me reconcile the accounts. "You're doing the right thing," he said once, sliding me a cup of coffee. "Keep records. If they move money, you'll see it." I nodded. I felt stronger when I had paper in my hand. The folder became a small fortress. That night, I slept with the folder under my arm, like a child hiding a secret toy. I was ready to wait. A week later, Allison tried to lock me out of the email. She changed the shared password and assumed I wouldn't notice. I did notice. I sat down at the counter, opened my laptop, and I read everything she had deleted from the inbox. Allison had tried to forward a big catering contract to a private address and instructed a lawyer to prepare a quick sale. I copied the deleted messages from the server history and saved them. Then I went to the bank. I explained calmly to the manager that I wanted to place a legal notice. The diner's name and tax ID were under review while internal audits ran. I signed papers that gave the bank permission to alert me if any transfer or lien appeared. The manager, an older woman with kind eyes, said, "You're smart to get this on record." I walked out with a stamped copy in my bag. Back home, I found Allison in the kitchen, pretending to clean. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear cross her face, tiny, quick. She didn't know what I had done, but she felt something shifting. That small fear tasted like victory. The first real fight came one Sunday morning when a supplier called angrily. Allison had promised weekly payments and skipped 3 deliveries. The supplier threatened to stop supplying unless bills were paid. My parents turned to me in front of the staff, shame and panic twisting their faces. "Mara, we need cash," my father said. "Can you cover it?" I looked at them all. Their faces were warm from sleep but cold in need. I handed over a check from the diner account. It was legal, mine to manage now. The staff murmured relief. After the supplier left, Allison flounced to the office and slammed the door. She scribbled a note trying to make it look like I had written it, saying she had authority to act. She left it on my desk so the others would see. I took the note, put it under the folder, and smiled. I called the town clerk that afternoon and asked about transfer rules for business ownership. She explained exactly what documents the bank would check in a sale: signed deeds, tax filings, and proof of authority. I sat with that list and matched it against the folder. The pieces fit. Their rush to sell had made mistakes. Those mistakes would save me. Allison and Bree grew bolder. Bree started telling staff that I was the harsh boss and that they should distrust me. She walked around handing out pay notices she'd written herself, trying to change shifts and wages. A server came to me, eyes downcast, saying her hours had been cut by mistake. I brought the payroll books into the light and showed the truth: the hours matched receipts. The missing money was not wages but small cash taken by someone who had easy access to the till. I did not shout. I called the staff together, laid out the receipts, and explained that we would start doing daily cash counts with signed logs. No more trust. When Allison overheard this, she stormed in, accusing me of making the place too strict. I said calmly, "We are a business now, not a game." That night, Allison barged into the office and tried to grab the folder from under my desk. She scratched my hand in the rush, but I pulled it back. We stood there, breathing hard, parents in the doorway. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She did not stop Allison. The moment ended with a silence so loud I could hear the clock tick. The battle had moved to a public place, and there was no going back. I hired a young lawyer named Claire who specialized in small businesses. She asked simple questions and made me sign papers that made my role official, manager with authority to audit and sign on behalf of the business during the review. Everything was legal, clear, and recorded. When I told my parents, they looked relieved more than proud. To them, it still felt like I was doing a favor, not taking charge. Allison and Bree watched from the doorway with folding arms and crooked smiles. The sisters tried to frighten the staff into loyalty, but after the daily cash counts and new shift signs, the team started to respect order. People returned to the diner because the food was good and the service was steady. One afternoon, Allison tried to sneak into the office to change a figure in the ledger. She left a scrap of paper with a number on it, as if trying to plant a new balance. I found it, preserved it, and photographed it. Every small act of theirs that was careless became another piece of evidence. I no longer felt like a trapped child. Each legal step I took, bank notice, audit, sign manager papers, was a brick laid in my path to safety. I felt tired, but not broken. I was building a wall they could not climb. The town was buzzing with whispers about our diner. Word had spread that the place was thriving again, but no one knew the truth behind the walls. My parents were basking in attention as if they'd done it themselves, while Allison and Bree preened like models. That afternoon, Mr. Tate arrived for a meeting. Allison smiled, offering her hand first, claiming credit. I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. "I heard about your turnaround," he said. "I'd love to talk business with you." Allison beamed. "I did most of the work. Mara just helps out." I smiled politely, and he looked confused. Later, I checked the email trail she had deleted. Every detail, every promise, every plan to sell, was mine now, documented and secure. I realized then that silence was more powerful than shouting. I could watch them stumble without a word. My revenge was no longer a dream. It was quietly moving forward. Bree tried to rally the staff against me the next morning. "She's trying to control everything," she whispered, planting seeds of doubt. But the team had seen the proof, the schedules matched, deliveries arrived, tips were fair. They looked to me, waiting for clarity. I didn't scold them, only explained calmly, "We run the diner like a business, not a playground." Bree stormed out, red-faced, and my parents barely glanced up. I realized then how much power I had quietly accumulated. Each staff member who chose to follow me became an ally, not a pawn. My parents thought they were in control, but I had shifted the board without them noticing. And the sisters? They were already walking on thin ice. One Saturday, Allison tried to finalize the deal with Mr. Tate while I was away at a supplier meeting. When I returned, she was smiling, certain she had succeeded. But I had left instructions at the bank and with our lawyer. No transaction could go through without my signature. Her smile faded when I calmly asked about the status. "The deal," she stuttered. I handed her the printed notice from the bank. "You can't sell what isn't legally yours." The air went cold. Bree's eyes widened, my parents' mouths opened, and Allison's hands trembled. The quiet control I'd been building exploded into a visible reckoning. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply showed the facts. The room was silent except for the hum of the fridge. For the first time, my family realized that the girl they dismissed, bullied, and ordered around had become untouchable. The next few weeks were a tense dance. Allison and Bree tried to manipulate staff, falsify logs, and intimidate customers. Each time, I countered with calm precision: receipts, schedules, audit trails. Customers noticed, staff respected the order, and the diner thrived. My parents' smiles grew forced as they watched their daughter's schemes fail. They had expected chaos. Instead, I created stability. One evening, I organized a small community meeting to discuss local suppliers, budgets, and plans. My family was invited as witnesses. Every point I made, every document I showed, highlighted the sisters' negligence without me uttering a word of blame. Their gasps, stutters, and flustered attempts to speak were all the punishment necessary. The quiet satisfaction in seeing their arrogance unravel was better than any confrontation. I began to understand the power of patience. Each careful, legal, strategic move compounded, leaving them weaker and me stronger. Then came the town's annual family business celebration. The mayor wanted to honor our diner publicly. Allison and Bree were certain they'd take full credit. They wore matching dresses, practiced smiles, and rehearsed speeches. My parents beamed like proud puppeteers. I stayed behind the scenes, watching quietly, letting them bask in the illusion. When the presentation began, the mayor started praising the Whitlock girls and their parents. Allison and Bree began preening. Then Tom stepped forward with the audit report I had prepared, all financials, ownership details, and documented proof of effort. The room went silent. Faces turned pale. My sisters' rehearsed smiles froze. My parents' pride cracked. Every false claim, every stolen credit was exposed in one calm, undeniable moment. No yelling, no shouting, just truth. And the town finally saw who had really saved the diner: me. The first real taste of public vindication swept through me, and I knew the final chapters of this story were close. The following weeks were quiet, almost surreal. The diner thrived. Customers smiled, staff trusted the system, and I walked the floor with confidence I'd never known. My parents avoided eye contact, Allison and Bree rarely spoke, and the house felt lighter without their constant interference. For the first time, I realized freedom wasn't just leaving the past, it was building something better on my own. I started implementing new menus, hosting small events, and quietly setting aside profits in my secure account. Each time Allison tried to sneak in, I calmly reminded her of the bank notice. Each time Bree tried to manipulate the staff, I showed schedules and receipts. They learned fast. Mara Whitlock had returned not to serve, but to rule. And for the first time in my life, I felt proud without guilt. One morning, my mother appeared at the diner, shoulders slumped, eyes tired. "Mara," she said softly, "we made mistakes. We need your help." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the intimidating figure who'd slapped me years ago. She was frail, desperate. I folded my hands, calm. "You'll need to do it yourselves," I said. No anger, no sarcasm. Just clarity. She hesitated, then nodded, shame crossing her face. Allison and Bree peeked from the corner, silent. They had watched my control grow, their plans fail, their power vanish. I realized that forgiveness didn't mean reopening wounds, it meant finally walking away, leaving them to reckon with their own failures. For the first time, I saw my parents as ordinary humans, and my sisters as children who had relied too long on entitlement. The town invited me to a local business awards ceremony for revitalizing the diner. I stepped on stage, wearing my calmest, most confident smile. Cameras flashed, people applauded, and I spoke clearly: "Thank you for honoring this family business. I hope this inspires others to never underestimate hard work, persistence, and truth." Behind me, Allison and Bree sat pale-faced, unable to claim credit. My parents clapped quietly, knowing they had no part in this triumph. The crowd knew the story, but I didn't need to explain. The quiet, undeniable proof, my audits, my records, my transformation, spoke for itself. For the first time, I felt the full weight of triumph. They had taken my youth, my energy, my patience, but they couldn't take my spirit. That night, I realized revenge wasn't about anger, it was about fairness, recognition, and reclaiming control. And I had it all. Weeks later, I sold the diner to a young woman eager to start her own business. I walked through the empty halls, touching the counters I had cleaned, the books I had balanced, the walls I had painted with sweat and love. My parents were there, hesitant, unsure. Allison and Bree hovered silently, eyes downcast. I handed over the keys, smiled softly, and said, "I hope you build it well." No blame. No lecture. Just closure. They had learned the hard way that hard work earns respect, and laziness earns regret. I left the diner with my head high, lighter than I had been in decades. The past stayed behind me, wrapped in lessons and consequences. The future was mine. Driving away, the wind lifted my hair, and I felt every ounce of freedom. The neon sign faded behind me as the young owner unlocked her future. I whispered to myself, they said hard work builds character, and they were right. It built mine, and buried theirs. A quiet smile curved my lips. I no longer carried anger, only strength, resilience, and peace. My parents and sisters were left to face their own reflections, their own failures. I didn't need to gloat, shout, or prove anything. I had won the right way, legally, morally, and emotionally. The world was quiet, steady, and mine to enjoy. And for the first time in my life, I truly felt unstoppable.